Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is the show where we take these vast oceans of information, stack up all the sources, and really just extract the essential, fascinating knowledge nuggets you need to be brilliantly informed.
And today we are undertaking a truly monumental deep dive into a career that is just a masterclass in self-determination.
It really is.
We're talking about 7 decades of work. I mean, think about that. He's been a B-movie actor, an international antihero, a jazz musician, a municipal politician.
And a 2-time Oscar-winning director.
And a 2-time Oscar-winning director. It's just an incredible arc.
So our mission today is to really dissect the method behind the myth of Clint Eastwood Jr. We've pulled apart the comprehensive biographies, the critical reviews, everything, to try and understand how he went from this stiff, almost ridiculed screen presence into the global cultural icon he is today.
It's an astonishing evolution, it really is, especially because the archetype he created, the man with no name, it's all built on silence and repression and mystery. So we have to explore this critical question. How much of that signature anti-hero persona was just, accidental? Maybe a result of his acting limitation.
And how much is strategically manufactured?
Exactly. And what role did his legendary, almost frantic discipline play in fueling all these multiple careers?
Okay, let's unpack this right from the very beginning, at the origins of the legend itself. Clint Eastwood Jr. was born on May 31st, 1930.
Which is just, the fact that he's still working, still directing at 95 years old is remarkable enough.
It is. But his entry into the world was already, oversized.
It really was. The hospital nurses, they immediately nicknamed him Samson.
Samson. Why?
Because he weighed in at a whopping 11 pounds, 6 ounces at birth. So that established this certain physical dominance, this presence right from the start, something that would, of course, define his screen image later.
And when you start to trace his lineage, his family tree, you find these roots that almost perfectly align with the whole pioneer spirit he would later romanticize and then, deconstruct in his films.
Oh, absolutely. He has English, Irish, Scottish, and Dutch ancestry, and it traces back really deep into American history. He is, in fact, the 12th generation descended from a monumentally famous figure.
Who are we talking about?
Mayflower passenger William Bradford, a founding leader of the Plymouth colony.
Wow. So he basically embodies genetically the exact kind of frontier mythology that the American Western is built on. That's a fascinating, almost symbolic foundation for a man who went on to define the genre for a whole new generation.
But that path to icon status was profoundly difficult. His early life was actually quite turbulent.
Which is surprising, right? Because his family's circumstances were relatively affluent.
They were. They were settled in Piedmont, California, which is a wealthy suburb. They belonged to a country club, had the nice house, the pool. And yet Eastwood himself was consistently unruly and, academically struggling.
He certainly didn't fit the mold. I was looking at the school records, and they reveal he was actually held back in middle school.
Yeah, and had to attend summer school because of poor scores.
And his time at Piedmont High was even more chaotic. He was asked to leave for several significant infractions. And these weren't small misdemeanors either.
No. We're talking about writing an obscene suggestion on the athletic field scoreboard.
Right. And maybe more surprisingly, burning an effigy on the school lawn.
Those actions, they speak to this innate defiance, a willingness to operate outside the established rules, which, again, it feels highly consistent with the anti-hero roles he was, destined to play.
So after transferring, he did eventually graduate in 1949, but he spent the next few years just working a string of hard, physical, odd jobs.
Lifeguard, forest firefighter, golf caddy. It shows a certain kind of blue-collar discipline that came way before his artistic discipline.
And that discipline was truly tested when he was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1951 during the Korean War.
Right. And this is where we hit the first truly astonishing near-death survival story that, it belongs in a movie itself.
It's the kind of luck that just defines the myth.
It is. While he was serving at Fort Ord, California, he was a passenger on a Douglas AD bomber, and it ran completely out of fuel. The plane just crashed into the Pacific Ocean near Point Reyes, and this was not a soft landing. The plane went down.
So how did he survive?
He and the pilot had to swim an incredible 2 miles in freezing water to reach safety on the shore using a life raft.
That experience, that kind of confrontation with random existential risk.
Yeah.
That must have profoundly shaped his outlook, even before Hollywood ever entered the picture.
You'd have to think so. But once he was discharged in 1953 and he started chasing acting, he just faced this massive wall of rejection and critique.
He really did. He signed his first contract with Universal in 1954 for $100 a week.
100 a week. But he was, physically awkward. He was uncoached. His contract was terminated after just a year and a half.
And the critique was brutal.
Oh, it was. He was deemed too stiff, too wooden, and specifically criticized for delivering his lines through his teeth.
Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting, because that critique, the stiffness, the teeth, the implied repression, that became his signature visual language.
Exactly. The failing of the mediocre actor became the defining trait of the global star. It's the ultimate turnaround.
So how did that happen?
Well, the director who initially signed him, Arthur Lubin, he recalled that Eastwood was quite amateurish. He said he didn't know which way to turn or which way to go or do anything.
So that stiffness was real.
It was real, but that lack of, expansive, easy acting lent itself perfectly to the anti-hero later on, where classic Western heroes like John Wayne were open and expansive and spoke clearly. Eastwood's physical repression implied menace. It implied interiority and unpredictable violence.
Despite all those early setbacks, he finally lands his breakthrough role in 1958, Rowdy Yates in the CBS Western series Rawhide.
A show that ran for 8 years, from 58 to 65.
So this was his training ground.
It was his training ground, but it was a grueling physical and creative grind. We're talking about a relentless schedule, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, year after year.
And the show was a huge hit. It hit number 6 in the ratings at one point. But Eastwood, he grew intensely dissatisfied with the character.
Yeah, he was nearly 30, but Rowdy Yates was written as this wide-eyed, slightly goofy, cloddish youngster who needed constant saving and instruction from the senior trail boss.
He was frustrated by the cliched, verbose scripts.
And that frustration, that desire to play something tougher and more morally ambiguous, that is the true genesis of the antihero.
So how was the pay?
Initially, not great. He made very little money, just $750 an episode at first. But the show's eventual cancellation was a massive financial boon.
How so?
He got a $119,000 severance package, which was a small fortune in the mid-1960s.
And that lump sum of cash, paired with his burning desire to escape the conventional white hat hero image of Rawhide.
It set the stage for perhaps the most important fortuitous circumstance in cinematic history, the spaghetti westerns.
Precisely. And the only reason he even got the offer to star in Sergio Leone's A Fistful of Dollars was because his Rawhide co-star, Eric Fleming, was the first choice.
And Fleming rejected it. He saw it as cheap B-movie work.
But Eastwood saw it as his chance for a complete pivot. He took the role for a relatively meager $15,000, plus a Mercedes-Benz bonus.
All because he explicitly wanted to be an anti-hero. He just wanted to be the opposite of Rowdy Yates.
And this is where the sort of deliberate manufacture of the icon really happens.
Oh, absolutely. Eastwood was instrumental in crafting the distinctive visual style of the man with no name. The threadbare poncho, the cigarillo, the 5 days of stubble, the whole taciturn nature.
He played the role with an extreme economy of words. He created all that menace and mystery entirely through attitude and movement. Let's talk about that economy of words for a second, because that's a critical distinction. It defined the new Western.
Right. On Rawhide, if a character needed to open a barn door, they'd have 3 lines of dialogue about how cold it was and what the plan was and why they needed to open the door. Exactly. The TV Western felt this obligation to over-explain everything. Motivations, plot points, all of it.
But in Leone's films, the man with no name simply walks up to the door, opens it, and walks through.
And the audience fills in the blanks. The character gains power from that ambiguity. Leone famously said he needed a mask more than an actor.
And Eastwood later said that he felt the less the character said, the stronger he became, and the more he grew in the imagination of the audience.
Silence was armor.
It's just wild to remember that when the Dollars trilogy finally hit the U.S. in 1967, the critical reaction was, well, hostile.
They were panned. A Fistful of Dollars was dismissed as cheapjack and vulgar, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was called repellent by some major critics.
The critics were just stuck on the polished aesthetic of classic Hollywood.
And they totally missed the cultural phenomena that was brewing right under the surface. Despite the critical disdain, these films were commercial juggernauts.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly earned $8 million in rental earnings alone,
which cemented his global stardom. By 1968, he was already ranked 5th on Quigley's top 10 money-making stars poll. And this disparity, this commercial magnetism, always preceding critical respect, that's a hallmark of his entire career.
And he immediately leveraged that financial power to seize control. In 1967, he established his own company, Malpaso Productions.
Named after Malpaso Creek on his Monterey County property. And this wasn't just a vanity label, it was a firewall.
A direct response to his experiences at Universal and the demands of TV.
Exactly. The goal of Malpaso was immediate creative and financial autonomy. His first joint production was the revisionist Western Hang 'em High in '68.
And the financial deal there demonstrates his immediate business savvy.
Oh, for sure. He earned $400,000 plus 25% of the net profits. He was no longer just an actor for hire, he was a partner in the profits.
But that desire for control, it led to one immediate, colossal mistake. The musical Paint Your Wagon.
In 1969, yeah. This really serves as the perfect lesson in why that control is so crucial.
What went wrong?
The production was just fraught. It was filmed in Oregon, plagued by terrible weather and delays. The budget ballooned to over $20 million.
Which was an astronomical sum for the era.
Astronomical. And it was neither a critical success nor a commercial winner. It lost money overall.
So that massive financial risk was maybe the final lesson he needed.
I think so. If you want ultimate creative control, you also have to be the most ruthlessly efficient person in the room. If you prove you can deliver a high-quality product on time and under budget, nobody can take your power away.
And that realization, that seems to be what defined his transition into directing.
This brings us directly to his transition into the role of, well, the auteur. His frustration with the long, tedious, and often wasteful directing styles he'd seen.
Throughout the 50s and 60s.
Exactly. That became the driving force behind the unique efficiency of his own directorial method, which debuted with Play Misty for Me in 1971.
And that efficiency is just legendary in Hollywood. It became his core trademark. He's renowned for shooting films quickly, keeping budgets remarkably low.
Avoiding excessive rehearsal and preferring to complete most scenes on the first take.
We're talking about a method that's been compared to film masters like Woody Allen for speed and Jean-Luc Godard for that minimalist focus.
It's a method born of discipline and pragmatism. Eastwood operates without storyboards. He trusts his gut and his initial setup.
He only sets up the essential shots he needs to tell the story.
Right. And this isn't just about saving money. It's a whole philosophical stance. He views exhaustive rehearsal as just draining the spontaneity and freshness out of a performance.
So by keeping the pace quick, he keeps the energy high and the budget low.
Which in turn ensures Malpaso's continued creative independence. He's always in control.
And that speed is also reflected in his narrative philosophy. He intentionally avoids providing excessive background details for characters or situations.
Exactly. He believes a film should respect the audience's intelligence. He provides the necessary details, but he avoids over-explaining motivations.
He forces you, the audience, to use your imagination, to lean in and get involved in filling in those gaps.
And it echoes his success with The Man with No Name mystery is power, and ambiguity generates depth.
That efficiency and that mindset, they set the stage for the character that would define American cinema and culture for the entire decade of the 1970s.
Harry Callahan.
Dirty Harry.
Released in 1971, Dirty Harry was more than just a box office success. It was a cultural flashpoint. It didn't just create a film franchise, it instantly codified and launched the entire loose cannon cop genre.
And the film grossed $22 million domestically, which was an enormous number for the time.
And the cultural consequence of that character was immediate. It extended far beyond the cinema. That immortal line,
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
that line didn't just become a national catchphrase. It directly and materially impacted the arms market.
How so?
It was a direct consequence of the character's weapon of choice. The film catapulted sales of the Smith & Wesson Model 29.44 Magnum revolver to unprecedented heights in the United States.
Wow. So a gun that was previously pretty niche and difficult to handle?
Became the ultimate symbol of cinematic, cool, and masculine power, purely because of the film's influence.
But the film also sparked massive political controversy. While audiences loved the action, critics and commentators were really split.
The backlash was severe. Critics, particularly those on the left, they labeled the film as fascistic.
Fascistic. That's a strong word.
A very strong word. They argued that the film celebrated vigilantism and endorsed lawlessness as the only effective solution to rising urban crime, which was a very real fear in 1970s America.
So the character of Callahan, dispensing justice outside the slow, flawed system, It resonated deeply with a frustrated public.
But it terrified those who worried about the collapse of democratic institutions. It created this powerful tension. Eastwood was using his minimalist, disciplined style to deliver a character who fundamentally questioned the moral fiber of the state itself.
And that theme of anti-establishment justice, it carried directly into his work directing Westerns in the mid-70s.
Yeah, he wasn't just directing. He was exploring moral darkness. In his first Western as director, High Plains Drifter in 1973, he injected supernatural themes and allegory.
He left the audience deeply confused about whether his character was a ghost, an avenging angel, or what?
Or the relative of a deputy who had been murdered by the townspeople. That blurring of the lines between man and myth.
And that led to real-world Hollywood conflict when he directed the outlaw Josie Wales in 1976.
That film really highlighted his absolute demand for control. 3 weeks into the shoot, he fired the director, Philip Kaufman.
And this high-profile incident was so controversial within the industry.
It resulted in the Directors Guild of America issuing him a fine, reportedly around $60,000, and, more significantly, it resulted in new DGA legislation.
A new rule.
A new rule specifically preventing producers like Eastwood operating through Malpaso from replacing directors mid-shoot. He literally forced a rule change in Hollywood because of his demand for total artistic self-determination.
The film itself also drew pointed criticism from the previous generation of Western icons.
Right. John Wayne, the quintessential white hat hero, actually wrote to Eastwood complaining that the townspeople depicted in Josie Wales didn't reflect the true spirit of the American pioneer.
That's because Eastwood was no longer interested in the myth.
Exactly. Wayne represented that romantic vision of community and manifest destiny. Eastwood was operating on a different philosophical plane. His westerns focused on moral ambiguity, the spiritual cost of violence, and the lone man operating outside society's protection.
He famously viewed the genre as the last masculine frontier, a space for reckoning.
But despite that intense focus on violence and moral complexity, his mid-career took this surprisingly profitable detour into slapstick comedy.
Every Which Way But Loose from 1978. He starred as a trucker and brawler named Philo Beto alongside an orangutan named Clyde.
And critics universally loved it. It was widely described as a critical disaster.
Yet, this is where the commercial juggernaut argument really strengthens.
It was the second highest grossing film of 1978. It completely shocked the industry.
So why did audiences embrace this strange detour when the critics were so revolted?
I think it was pure star power and timing. Eastwood was so associated with gritty violence that seeing him in this low-stakes, absurd, semi-romantic road trip movie, it was a novelty that audiences just couldn't resist.
It proved his bankability was utterly transcendent of critical opinion.
And the sequel, Any Which Way You Can in 1980, was also a massive box office success. It ranked among the year's top 5 highest-grossing films.
Meanwhile, the political currency of his roles just kept rising. In Sudden Impact in '83, the fourth Dirty Harry film, his line, "Go ahead, make my day," entered the national lexicon.
It moved from cinema to national policy almost overnight. President Ronald Reagan famously quoted that line in a speech to Congress,
Daring his political opponents to challenge his policies.
Exactly. The line was instantly synonymous with Reagan's tough, decisive posture during the 1984 presidential elections. This is the ultimate example of an actor creating a character whose philosophy defined political rhetoric for a generation.
The ultimate validation, however, finally arrived not with a box office smash, but with the critical respect he had been seeking since the Dollars trilogy.
Right. That moment came with his Western Pale Rider in 1985.
Pale Rider was a deliberate return to the themes of High Plains Drifter. It was heavily influenced by the classic Western Shane.
And critics were effusive. It was hailed as the best Western to appear for a considerable period. And one critic specifically stated that Pale Rider was the moment Clint Eastwood finally earned respect as an artist.
So it was the culmination of his directorial efforts in the genre.
And it paved the way for his shift into prestige filmmaking in the 1990s.
And the 1990s began with his ultimate career-defining validation, all rooted in this strategic decision to delay a single film for many years.
We're talking about Unforgiven.
Of course.
And that delay was a critical piece of artistic foresight. Eastwood purposefully held onto the script, knowing the thematic weight of the film, this gritty deconstruction of the Western myth, depended entirely on him playing an aging, worn-down ex-gunfighter.
He needed to be old enough and look old enough to carry the weight of decades of violence and guilt.
And the results were revolutionary. Unforgiven in 1992 was a massive commercial and critical triumph. It was nominated for 9 Academy Awards.
And won 4, including Best Picture and, crucially, Best Director for Eastwood.
It's universally recognized today as one of the finest, most profound American Westerns ever made.
And critics who had dismissed him as a fascistic B-movie actor were forced to eat their words.
Oh, absolutely. Vincent Canby, writing in the New York Times, he observed that Eastwood, now in his early 60s, looked even taller, leaner, and more mysteriously possessed than he did a quarter-century prior.
As the man with no name.
Right, describing his presence as some fierce force of nature. The years hadn't diminished his antihero persona, they had deepened its complexity and its sorrow.
He also proved his massive commercial pull remained undiminished. The Secret Service thriller In the Line of Fire in '93 grossed $102 million domestically.
And he was voted #1 in the Money-Making Stars poll once more. A staggering 25 years after he first appeared on that list thanks to the spaghetti westerns.
But what's so fascinating is how he simultaneously exercised his directorial range beyond westerns and thrillers.
Yeah, A Perfect World in '93, starring Kevin Costner, was cited by many as one of his most underrated directorial achievements. It showcased a subtlety and character study that critics hadn't always credited him with.
Then came the ultimate pivot, the romantic drama, The Bridges of Madison County in 1995.
A commercial and critical smash opposite Meryl Streep, this cemented his reputation as a director who could command any genre.
He earned France's prestigious César Award for Best Foreign Film for that.
He was no longer just a cowboy director, he was a universal filmmaker.
The 2000s, however, would represent his undisputed directorial peak, leading to historic awards recognition few director-actors ever achieve.
Starting with the devastating crime drama Mystic River in 2003, it was an intense film dealing with the lifelong psychological damage of trauma, murder, vigilantism.
Garnering him Best Director and Best Picture nominations.
And that success was immediately followed by the truly historic achievement of Million Dollar Baby in 2004. This film just dominated the Academy Awards.
It won 4 Oscars, including Best Picture and, again, Best Director.
And the statistics are just mind-boggling. At 74, he became the oldest director to win Best Director.
And, perhaps more impressively, he became one of only 2 people in Academy history, the other being Warren Beatty, to be nominated twice for Best Actor and Best Director for the same film.
Unforgiven was the first time, and Million Dollar Baby was the second. That tells you everything you need to know about his dual mastery. He was performing at an Oscar-worthy level while simultaneously guiding the entire artistic and technical process to perfection.
In following this peak, he undertook an ambitious and deeply empathetic 2-film exploration of the Battle of Iwo Jima in 2006.
Right, the duology. Flags of Our Fathers and the profoundly impactful companion piece, Letters from Iwo Jima.
And Letters from Iwo Jima was groundbreaking.
It really was. It demonstrated his maturity as a storyteller. It was the first American film of that magnitude to depict a major war issue entirely from the perspective of the enemy, the Japanese soldiers.
And it was filmed entirely in Japanese.
Entirely in Japanese. This commitment to multiple, difficult perspectives was recognized globally. The film won the Golden Globe for Best Foreign Language Film.
Even as he transitioned into his late 70s and 80s, his late career box office appeal was still just soaring.
Oh, yeah. In 2008, Gran Torino, where he ended a 4-year self-imposed acting hiatus, set a career-high opening weekend gross.
And unadjusted for inflation, it became his highest-grossing film worldwide.
It proved his personal presence still drove massive commercial success, and that success continued. His biographical war thriller American Sniper in 2014 became an absolute commercial monster,
Grossing over $547 million globally.
once again solidifying his status as an A-list director well into his 80s. Even more recently, films like Sully in 2016 continued to gross enormous sums, over $238 million worldwide.
Which brings us right up to the present day. His latest directorial chapter, Juror #2, was released in 2024. And while the rumors always surfaced that this might be his final directorial effort,
It's important to note that insiders consistently deny this claim. He seems utterly incapable of stopping.
so as we step back from the filmography, this is where the most complex and interesting part of Eastwood's legacy really emerges. The fact that he's always lived these 3 parallel lives.
The icon, the fiercely disciplined artist, and the unexpected public figure.
Let's start with that public service role. For 2 years, from 1986 to 1988, he served as the nonpartisan mayor of the small, picturesque town of Carmel by the Sea, California.
And his motivation was all about local politics and bureaucracy, not national ambition. He was initially furious about the town council's rejection of a planning application he submitted for a building he owned.
So he just ran for mayor.
He ran a successful campaign centered on common sense regulation, and his tenure is filled with these amusingly local accomplishments.
He earned a nominal $200 a month, which he donated to the Carmel Youth Center.
Right, but he achieved some key civic victories. He made ice cream legal to consume on city streets.
Which was a bizarre prohibition before he arrived.
A very bizarre prohibition. And he facilitated the building of a city library annex. He declined to run for a second term, but he clearly demonstrated his ability to cut through red tape when he was motivated.
And his political affiliations, they reflect a consistent thread of anti-statist individualism.
Totally. He transitioned from being a registered Republican, where he remained affiliated until 2008, to a registered libertarian.
And his endorsements have been varied, confusing political pundits for years. He supported Mitt Romney in 2012.
Famously delivering the improvised empty chair speech at the RNC, a gesture he later admitted he regretted. He said he got caught up in the moment.
But then, in 2020, he publicly supported the Democrat Michael Bloomberg,
stating specifically that he wished the current president at the time would act in a more genteel way without tweeting and calling people names. This pattern suggests his political decisions are less about party loyalty and more about his consistent preference for restrained governance and personal dignity.
Now let's dive into the road he almost took, music.
Right. Before acting, he originally intended to pursue a music theory degree and trained intensely as a boogie-woogie pianist.
And that musical aspiration never died, even as he found fame in Hollywood.
Not at all. In 1959, while filming Rawhide, he produced an album called Cowboy Favorites, and he toured rodeos and state fairs singing with his co-stars.
Though a producer told him bluntly in 1963 he would never make it big as a singer.
But he was receiving high fees for those musical appearances, and music became absolutely integral to his filmmaking. He established his own Warner Bros. Records imprint, Malpaso Records,
which has released all the scores for his films, beginning with The Bridges of Madison County.
He wasn't just directing the drama, he was setting the emotional tone. He composed the scores and wrote the music for critically acclaimed films like Mystic River, $1 Million Baby, and Changeling.
His compositional style often favors these minimalist, jazz-influenced piano themes,
which perfectly complement his efficient, stripped-down visual style. He even wrote and performed the song heard over the credits of Gran Torino.
And his deep passion for music was formally recognized in 2007.
He received an honorary Doctor of Music degree from Berklee College of Music. This demonstrates that his parallel career was a genuine, lifelong artistic pursuit, not just a hobby.
Now, moving to his health and personal philosophy, we find the core engine of his famous discipline.
And the catalyst for his famous regimen was deeply personal. His father's death from a heart attack at the relatively young age of 64 back in 1970.
His grandfather had lived to 92, and his father's early death was a profound shock. A friend described the event as the only bad thing that ever happened to him in his life.
And this shock led to an immediate, almost fanatical change. It spurred him to adopt an even more rigorous health regimen. He became obsessed with efficiency and urgency, both on set and in his personal life.
He became a certified health and fitness fanatic.
Featured in magazines discussing the virtues of avoiding sugar and excessive alcohol, focusing instead on rigorous exercise and eating raw vegetables. This physical discipline is directly connected to his directorial discipline. Both are rooted in longevity and efficiency.
He also took control of his environment, investing heavily in the region he loves, Carmel by the Sea.
He owns the historic Mission Ranch Hotel and Restaurant, and he holds significant investment stakes in the world-renowned Pebble Beach golf links. He is also an FAA-licensed private pilot.
Certified to fly both fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters. Again, this is a man who demands control over his physical world.
And his spiritual life is equally compelling, especially in light of the moral themes in his films. He publicly stated to a critic in 1973, "No, I don't believe in God."
His daughter, Catherine, has since confirmed that most of my earthly family do not believe in or worship God.
He identifies his spirituality as being rooted in nature, noting that standing on the side of the Grand Canyon moves me in some way.
That non-belief actually provides this pragmatic framework for his individualism. He pondered that if nothing happens after you die, maybe it makes you live life better.
It suggests a very humanistic philosophy. You are supposed to do the best you can with the gift you are given, because that's all you have.
And this pragmatic individualism is paired with a very specific spiritual practice.
Transcendental meditation, or TM. He publicly proclaimed his dedication to TM back in 1975, even appearing with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. He has meditated every morning for decades.
And TM is promoted as a technique for deep relaxation and mental clarity, not a religious practice.
Which perfectly aligns with his disciplined individual pursuit of internal peace, despite his rejection of conventional religion.
Finally, we should briefly touch on the complexity of his family life, which spans decades and many relationships.
He has had numerous relationships of varying intensity, having at least 8 known children by 6 women. It's a topic he fiercely keeps private.
He emphasizes that his family members are vulnerable people whom he must protect from the media spotlight.
His relationships have spanned decades. His first wife, Maggie Johnson, long-term relationships with Sandra Locke and Frances Fisher, his second wife, Dina Ruiz. Most recently, his partner, Christina Sandera, tragically died in July 2024.
But true to his fiercely private and individual nature, by the fall of 2024, he was reportedly already in a new relationship.
Moving forward with the same determined pace that defines his entire working life.
So if we synthesize all this knowledge, the anti-hero persona, the ruthless efficiency, the political independence, the musical talent, what does this 70-year career fundamentally represent?
It's fundamentally defined by the continuous, almost compulsive pursuit of control. From establishing Malpaso Productions the moment he earned enough money,
To the DGA forcing a rule change because of his onset demands and his strict health regimen.
Eastwood has always demanded the autonomy to operate on his own terms.
So the key takeaway for you, the learner, is that his enduring success is this powerful case study in combining high-efficiency few takes, low budgets, little need for storyboards, with ruthless artistic self-determination.
He carved out a space where he could make exactly the kind of movies he wanted, mastering every genre from the bleak cynicism of the spaghetti westerns
To heartwarming romantic dramas like Bridges in Madison County and award-winning biopics like Million Dollar Baby.
He became the ultimate anti-hero, not by accident, but by consciously rejecting the white hat image, demanding a mask that implied mystery, forcing the audience to meet him halfway and use their imagination.
And this leads us to the final provocative thought to mull over, connecting his personal philosophy back to his artistic output.
Think about the fact that Eastwood publicly maintains his stated non-belief in a conventional God, yet is a longtime practitioner of transcendental meditation for spiritual balance.
Then you look at his greatest, most acclaimed films. High Plains Drifter, where his character might be a ghost, Pale Rider, where his character feels like a biblical avenger, and the Oscar-winning modern tragedy Mystic River.
Which is an intense wrestle with guilt, destiny, and moral reckoning. So what's the ultimate significance of the fact that the art of this ultimate pragmatist wrestles so intensely with questions of moral judgment and the spiritual cost of violence? You are left to consider the source of the moral compass guiding the decisions of Hollywood's ultimate antihero.